when you were really the only person telling those stories and fighting to get those stories told.
I was with the Negro Ensemble Company in New York. There isn't a black actor who you can name now who's a star or whatever these days that hasn't gone through the NEC, the Negro Ensemble Company. Back at the Negro Ensemble Company, when there were a bunch of us that was just getting started in a play called The Soldier's Play, which included the likes of Denzel Washington, Samuel L. Jackson, and Brent Jennings, and Stephen Anthony Jones, and Steve Zettler.
It's one thing to tell our stories to people of color, people who look like you. But how are you able to tell those same stories where you have the majority who also want to listen and watch? Because
of the common denominators, that human element, it's that's the thing that bridges these cultural gaps. And we've got some cultural divides, some abysses that exist here in these United States for a variety of reasons. I've seen people come up to me after seeing a play I've done and say, and in tears, and just say, your work is healing. And that's why I keep doing this. That's the thing that keeps me coming back.
When it's all said and done, what do you hope people say about you?
The same thing Cicely Tyson said, rest her soul. They asked her that question the other day, and that's always been the answer that I would have, which is, I did the best I could. It really is just that simple. I did the best I could.
More on Lee's career. Go to our website, NBCDFW.com. NBC5 Today at 6 starts right now.
You're watching NBC5 Today.
The S-band radar at NBC5 looking much better this morning than yesterday, but this will all change. Blizzard-like conditions. That is what is in store for North Texas over the next few days. We're talking as well single-digit temperatures, below freezing wind chills, and inches of snow. Grant is tracking the extreme cold timeline. This morning, the I-35 expressway in Fort Worth is still shut down. Crews working to clear the wreckage for nearly 24 hours now. Once again, the weather is impacting schools in North Texas, and we've got a full list at NBCDFW.com. But we do need to let you know, Dallas and Arlington ISDs are open today. Students will log in for virtual learning only. Fort Worth ISD is open for both in-person and virtual learning on this Friday, February 12th. Rise and shine, North Texas. We have made it into another day, and glad you're spending part of it with us. I'm Deborah Ferguson.
And I'm Laura Harris. We want to start the top of this hour with meteorologist Grant Johnston. Grant, here's the thing. Like you always say, you're not one to exaggerate. So when you say something like blizzard-like conditions, I'm definitely listening.
Okay, well, good. Laura, I'm glad because it has my attention for sure. And what makes it so much different this time around is that the cold air is already in place. The last time that we had the wet snowflakes in January and that didn't really accumulate in the Metroplex, it accumulated down south, it wasn't cold enough. But this time around, it looks like it's going to be cold enough. The cold air is in place already. We won't be waiting on the temperature to drop. It will already be sufficiently cold enough, and it looks like there's going to be enough moisture. Now, out the door right now, it's just very cold. We've got temperatures in the 20s, wind chills you see on the right, down in single digits. In Fort Worth, feels like 8, 14 in Dallas, 11 for the wind chill up in McKinney, or in Denton, and 10 for the wind chill in McKinney. The DFW morning commute here this morning is dry, so that's good news. It's just going to be cloudy and cold today. We don't have to worry about any icy precipitation like we did yesterday morning. The planning forecast here, though, shows cloudy, cold weather, wind chills in the teens or maybe single digits briefly this morning, then 31 later today. We may see a brief cameo appearance of sunshine today. It would be limited, but we might get a little bit around 3 or 4 o'clock. So all quiet for the time being on the S-band radar. But let's talk about what's coming. A winter storm watch is in effect for Saturday night through Monday. This will almost certainly be upgraded to a winter storm warning by the National Weather Service as we get closer. So today is a day to prepare for the weekend. Tomorrow, there could be some brief light icing during the day. We saw what light ice did yesterday with that freezing drizzle. We may have some patchy areas of freezing drizzle tomorrow. That's what I'm concerned with. But even more of a concern is what's coming Sunday night into Monday. Accumulating snow looks very probable with major travel impacts along with it. Coming up, we'll talk about numbers, just how much snow we could see, and then the dangerous cold that's going to move in along with it. But right now, we need to get you up to speed on the roads with Samantha Davies.
Yeah, and it's a much better commute this morning. Now, we still have a big closure on 35W in Fort Worth. This is following the horrific crash that happened yesterday. Crews are still clearing the accident and investigating. So 35W southbound remains shut down from North Loop 820 all the way to Northeast 28th Street. All the ramps that connect you to 35W are still closed, and the Techspress lanes remain closed. Northbound lanes of 35W are open, and if you take a look at this camera off to the right-hand side, you can see that traffic is getting by. It's not heavy, and everybody appears to be moving just fine. DFW traffic as a whole looking much better. I don't have any significant delays, and as far as any ice is concerned, I think there could still be some patchy spots because it really didn't get a chance to melt with temperatures staying below freezing, but overall conditions looking much better. Just pay attention and still take it slow if you need to. Back to you guys.
Okay, Samantha, thank you. You heard Samantha talking about the highway still closed in Fort Worth, where that deadly massive pileup happened yesterday. The wreckage spanning for a mile. More than 130 vehicles, cars, pickup trucks, SUVs, 18-wheelers, all smashed together. 6 people died in this accident, and our thoughts are with everyone affected by all of this, including the community. You know, the video we have been seeing is heartbreaking, but it's one thing to see it. It's quite another to live through it. This morning, our Alanna Quillen is live at the scene for us. And Alanna, one man talked about how he thought he was going to die more than once.
That's right, Laura. Well, first, I want to show you what the scene looks like this morning. We've been watching crews make significant progress overnight, clearing the wreckage over the past several hours now. This is what the scene looks like from this vantage point. Much of that's been removed. In fact, we've been watching a street sweeper and other trucks combing back and forth through the lanes to get the last of the debris. But back to that story of the man who was trapped inside the wreckage. Tim Mills was delivering a load of lumber when it happened. He says he was one of the first to get hit. Now, before the crash, he says there's probably about 20 cars in front of him once the pileup started. He was slowing down his extended cab pickup truck, but the traffic behind him was still coming at full speed. He tried moving over, but was rear-ended by a vehicle behind him, and then those semi-trucks further behind lost control. Mills says he lost count of how many trucks and other vehicles struck him. He described it as a slow-motion disaster that kept getting worse.
Once people started topping that hill, we were just blind to them. You know, they were coming over there at 60 miles an hour. And when that semi, I saw him, and I said, "This is it." You know, that's how fast how hard he hit us. I mean, it was unbelievable. It was crazy. It's the craziest thing I've ever experienced. I really didn't think I was going to make it out, to tell you the truth.
Now, miraculously, Mills says a semi-truck that crashed behind him blocked anybody else from hitting him or the other victims up front. He was trapped, but first responders showed up quickly. He says the crews ended up using his truck with the heater somehow still running to keep 2 injured victims warm during the cleanup. After police tended to most of the seriously injured, Mills was finally freed from the wreckage almost 3 hours later with just minor injuries. Now, over the last 24 hours after the crash, the rest of Interstate 35 is expected to open at some point today. Once they finish clearing up the rest of the debris here, we'll be sure to keep you posted when that happens. Back to you.
Okay, Alanna, thank you. Now, many questions remain about how a wreck this bad on a morning we knew would bring tricky travel happened. We want to head into the newsroom and Evan Anderson now for this part of the story. And Evan, I remember some of the first responders say they were stunned by the amount of ice on pavement that was reportedly treated.
Yeah, right, Laura. In fact, Deborah, excuse me. In fact, one source who was at the scene described the road as a solid sheet of ice. And whenever anything like this happens, our investigative team starts asking questions. The Fort Worth Fire Department spokesman confirms firefighters and paramedics had to bring in their own sand and salt to create areas they could walk on to reach the victims. Fort Worth State Representative Raymond Romero already has plans to call for hearings in Austin to question the company that maintains that stretch of privately operated toll lanes about whether they treated the road. North Tarrant Express Mobility Partners is responsible for that part of I-35W. So coming up in our next half hour, the company's response and the concerns from Representative Raymond Romero. Back to you.
All right, Evan, thank you. Time now 6:08. As far as the temperatures are concerned, our weather experts say we haven't seen anything yet. We're talking so cold that hypothermia could be a risk over the weekend. Our Ben Russell has a look at how to protect yourself and into next week, Ben.
There is a major difference between just being very cold and something much worse, hypothermia, when your body's losing more heat than it can keep in. If you start to experience symptoms like extreme shivering, slurred speech, difficulty breathing even, that is a sign that you may need medical attention. So how to stop that from happening? Here's some answers.
The main thing, we want you to stay inside. If you can avoid being out in the temperatures when they are this cold, that's to your benefit.
But if you must be outdoors,
if you do have to go out, if you work out in the cold air, we want you to dress appropriately. And that means to wear various layers of clothing, and they need to be light layers, but still warm.
Kyle Clay with the Fort Worth Fire Department says 3 layers of clothing is best. A base layer with a wicking material that pulls moisture away from the body, a middle layer that insulates, and an outer layer that is both water and windproof. And then don't forget gloves and a hat. But even if you are dressed appropriately, you still need to listen to your body.
The main thing is, if you're outside, we don't want you to overexert yourself. If you start sweating, you're going to start getting really cold.
Another important thing to do, keep hydrated. Another consideration, if you must be outside for any particular period of time, it is best to get some version of shelter, even for a few minutes if you can. Even a car with its engine off is better than being out in the bitter cold elements. In North Richland Hills, Ben Russell, NBC5.
All right, Ben, thank you. Time now is 6:10 on your Friday morning. Taking a live look outside at Fort Worth right now. Those temperatures in the 20s, but as you can see there, the flag is moving, so those wind chills are a lot colder. Meteorologist Grant Johnston as well as Samantha have a look at your traffic and weather together. And we are still taking a look at those school closures for you. We just learned that buses for Fort Worth ISD are running very late this morning. And there are some school closures and delays that you also need to hear about. We've got everything you need to know on our website, nbcdfw.com. Go to the top of the screen there, school closings. You'll see it at the upper right-hand corner. The complete list is there. We continue to monitor that for you all morning long. We'll be right back.